the media channel.
Yeah. You're gonna have one viewer at least. It will be me checking it works. It works. That's all. Okay. Do you have a? It's fine if I put it here. Yes.
Also, yeah, nobody can say like this. And they can change like this. Okay. It works.
So, what's your university? I don't care. Are you going to present yourself?
No,
Okay. What university are you from? Milano? Bicocca. Bicocca. Di Milano, University of Milano Bicocca. Bicocca, no Bicocca, Bicocca. University of Di Milano Bicocca. And you're doing your master thesis. Which city was hanging?
hola.
All right. And these ones, this. Yeah, if you want, but as you want, then you have to write it. Then you can. If you want, if you don't want, you don't need it. You want easy, just like him, and you do this. And then you can do something, but you can try with it. All right. I think let's wait 1 more minute. People are involved that over the guy when the guy dances what's it called? Hello. Hi. Today we have Giulia Cortinovis. She's from the University of Milano Bicocca, and she's been working with Silvia for 3 months. Right. And yeah, she's going to talk to us about underwater videos in the channel of Menorca.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, everyone. And I've been here for 3 months during an Erasmus internship for the thesis for my master's degree in the project of macrobios that is led by Silvia and her team. And it's about the study of biodiversity and connection with ecosystem services under the influence of climate change and human impacts, very in general. It's a European project, but the case study in Spain was focused on the milebeds in the Menorca channel. Milebed is this habitat that is formed by algae that produce some calcareous structures. And they collected samples from 2021 to 2022 using 3 different non-intrusive techniques that were bioacoustic, eDNA, so environmental DNA, and underwater videos. and they work to analyze this video that they collected. So today I will give a general introduction on the different underwater video techniques, their advantages and disadvantages, and then I will speak more deeply about my thesis project, so about the use of this video to determine the habitats in the Menorca channel, in particular of the Laminaria rodriguezi beds. So the first and cheapest way to take a video underwater is with a diver. Of course, it's faster and cheaper because the diver can go directly to the target of your study, and the video is shorter, so it's also less time that you spend analyzing the video and less storage that you need for your data. But of course, this technique is limited only to shallow environment because the diver cannot go too deep and the time is limited. And also the human factor is present, so there is an interference with the natural behavior of the species, and also there is a low replicability. On the other hand, with remote underwater videos, we have a higher range of depth and time, and also of a higher replicability. This is actually the tripod that has been used during the project with these two spaces, and in each one there's a GoPro recording the video. This tripod was led onto the seabed, so the video was stationary. But another way to take this video is to move it onto a transect, depending on the objective of your research. The main disadvantages are that the taxonomic resolution is low. So for most organisms, you cannot detect the species, but maybe only the genus or the family, depending on the species. And also small species or transparent species are very difficult to detect. The kind of technique depends also on the battery life, image quality, and on the data storage that you have. But nowadays the technologies are improving, so this limitation is less relevant. And in this case, this is always a remote underwater video, but with a bait. So you have the tripod with the camera, but there's also a long tube with this bait at the end. So of course, this works better with carnivorous species and less with herbivorous. And the advantage is that it attracts the animals closer to the camera. So if you have a low visibility, you can still see quite good the animal, but you need a long time to attract the animals. So at least 45 or 60 minutes. So you also need a battery that lasts a long time. And the most technological ones also are the most expensive, of course. Remotely operated vehicles are connected to the boat via a cable. So the depth at which they can go is limited by the length of the cable, while autonomous underwater vehicles do not have the cable, and their path is determined by a software. So you can program in advance where you want it to go, how much deep, and where you want to take it back, so the coordinates. The advantage, of course, is that the quality of the image is much higher and the movement is controlled, so it's more balanced with the currents. And you can also fix the depth at which you want to collect the image. They also have other tools like other source of light, so you can see better the colors underwater. And you can also take samples of the water. So together with the video, you can also measure a pH or temperature of the sample. And the disadvantage, of course, is the cost, but also not only the cost of the technology, but also of the vessel that you need, and that you need expert technicians to use them. In general, underwater video techniques are non-intrusive, so they are very good to study the animal behavior and their activity in their natural environment without interfering too much with it, and to monitor the macrofauna, so larger organisms, and to monitor the habitat in particular when you want to assess their conservation strategy, like a marine protected area, if it's working. You don't want to be intrusive in an ecosystem that maybe is already damaged. And also to monitor human impact, like trawling or pollution. My thesis project was then focused on the biodiversity and habitat characterization of the beds of Laminaria rodriguezi in the Menorca channel. So the data that I used were derived from the Macrobios project that I talked about before. And in the mares, there was a project done from 2009 to 2011, always in the Menorca channel, but in this case, the technique was intrusive because they used the beam tool to collect epibenthic organisms. And so I used this data to characterize the biodiversity of the site, and the videos to target more the macrofauna, so the largest organisms, and to characterize the different habitats of the Menorca channel. So the study area was the channel between Mallorca and Menorca. Here there are two areas where fishing is not prohibited today. It is prohibited today. The cable zone, where there are underwater cables, and here fishing has always been prohibited. And in the protected area, that is the green one, this was created in 2016. So when in the Mares project was done, in that area fishing was allowed, and now it's prohibited. And in the Menorca channel, during the Mares project, they used an ROV to collect images of all the seabeds of the channel, and so to map the habitat at a larger scale. And they classified it basically depending on the kind of bottom, so if it was coralligenous or sand or mire, and if there were some dominant algae like laminaria or red algae like osmundaria and Peixonelia. And these are the images that they took from the ROV. I didn't use them for my thesis because I used the video of the tripod, but it was just to show the high quality of the image from an ROV. These reddish purplish are the mire, so these calcareous structures, and you can see even the details of a sea urchin from an ROV. While these are some screenshots that I took from the videos of taken by the tripod, so you can see that the quality of the image is lower, but still you can detect the kind of habitat, if it's homogeneous or if there are patches. So even if the quality is lower for our objective, this was good enough. And here are the examples of the three main habitats that I classified. So this is an example of mire bed. This is sand with the, well, I don't know if it's clear, but there are some signs of turbation by sea urchin. And this is an example of a bed of laminaria. And for my thesis, I decided to focus on the species of Laminaria rodriguezi because it is very poorly known in the Mediterranean. And the Mediterranean is the southern, the most southern distribution of this species. So Laminaria rodriguezi is an example of a kelp algae. Kelp algae is a group of brown algae, a wider group, in which also the genus Laminaria belongs to. There is an algae that can be found in temperate waters, so at colder temperatures, and they can grow up to 45 meters, forming real kelp forests, but this usually in the oceans. In the Mediterranean, they grow more horizontally, 1 to 2 meters long, so they are not forests, but they are called kelp beds. They provide different ecosystem services, for example, food and shelter, so protection from predators, to many different fish species, but also invertebrates, marine mammals. And importantly, there are nursery grounds for fish. This means that many fish species choose the laminaria to grow, for the juveniles to grow to adults. So they are important to, for example, to replenish the fish stocks that are overfished. And other services are the protection from coastal erosion, but also they are considered a blue carbon system because they have a very high rate of uptake of CO2 from the water column, and their photosynthesis, they produce the organic compound that are stored in the cells. And when the kelp die, the leaf, the blades, falls to the seabed where the carbon can be buried and stored and trapped into the sediments. They are even directly consumed by humans, especially in Asia. For example, the algae kombu and wakame are part of kelp's algae, or they are used to produce some molecules that are used in the cosmetical sectors, pharmaceutical sectors, or to feed other fishes or in farming. The main threat for kelp's ecosystems are trawling. because trawling destroys directly the kelps, but also it destroys the substrate, so the kelps cannot grow. And also because fishing in general alters the balance of the trophic chain, so with consequences on, especially on kelps, because they are the primary level. And another consequence, another threat is global warming, of course, because they are adapted to colder temperatures, or also due to climate change, the increased frequency and intensity of storms is a major problem for kelps. In the Mediterranean Sea, I did a systematic literature review, and I found out that in the Mediterranean, there are 3 species of laminaria. Laminaria saccharina, of course, only in the Mediterranean coast of Morocco, and Laminaria colerca in the Alboran Sea and in the Strait of Messina. But these 2 species are usually found in the Atlantic Ocean, while Laminaria rodriguezi is the only one that is endemic of the Mediterranean, so it can only be found in the Mediterranean Sea, at very particular conditions with in sites where the temperature is constant throughout the year, around 14 degrees, with the dim light conditions, so not too strong intensity of light, and with the substrate that should be calcareous, so like in Menorca in the Menorca channel. In the Mediterranean, Laminaria rodriguezi is protected by the Barcelona Convention, that is a convention on biological diversity. But it has been suggested that it should be included as an endangered species in the IUCN classification system. For example, in the Adriatic Sea, it can be found only in the middle between Croatia and Apulia, basically. And here it has been estimated that in the last 50 years, about the 85% of the population decreased due to trawling. So from the Indemaret project, I took the species abundance metrics, so basically density of each species in each station, but considering only the positions in which I was a recording of presence of Laminaria rodriguezi. And I studied the biodiversity based on 2 factors, the habitat type and the fishing effort. So in this multidimensional scaling is a multivariate analysis of the epifaunal biodiversity based on the Bray-Curtis similarity. And here the positions are clustered according to their similarity, and it shows the kind of habitat for each point. So we can see that, for example, Prinsonelia, that is a red algae, that is this cross, is clustered separately, or even Osmundaria have their own clusters. And we can see that the habitat type is a strong driver of the species richness, so the number of the species per each station. But even fishing from no area where there's no fishing to areas where there's high fishing, the species richness is strongly decreased. Even if there's high variability in each group of fishing, because the habitat type is the main driver of biodiversity in the Menorca channel more than fishing. But still, for the fishing effort, we see a good trend. And from macrobias, I chose 20 minutes from each replicates from each station, the 20 minutes that were of best quality. Here, for example, we can see there's a cat shark swimming, and there's but it's not so good, but there's an hermit crab here crawling. So for each video, I try to classify the habitat type and also if the habitat was homogeneous or heterogeneous. And here, for example, is a site of Laminaria bed. And even from this video, we can see how Laminaria is important as a nursery ground, because there were many more species and individuals of species than in the other sites. For example, here there's a and there are some coral swimming. And here there's a Maya bed with an octopus that is coming towards the tripod. And and for every video, I had some classifications for the habitat. For example, this is the Maya bed, or also to detect if there was a sessile fauna, sessile or flora, so laminaria, but also other algae like Osmundaria, Personalia, but always for flora and fauna, it was only a present substance because you cannot really count how many individuals you have. And for the mobile fauna, also the activities, if they were feeding, swimming, or crawling. And if there were some signs of bioturbation, so mainly mounds or paths that are digged by the sea urchins usually. And then this is one of the heat maps we derive. And here, for example, based on the present absence of different species, according to the different stations, we tried to cluster the stations and the species based on their similarity, but only on present absence, so not quantifying the individuals. So the main conclusions of my work were that from Indemaris data that the habitat type is the major driver of biodiversity in the Menorca channel more than fishing, and that underwater videos were very useful to monitor the habitat type and the macrofauna, especially for laminaria, because laminaria occurs very deeply from like 60 to 100 meters deep. So when a diver usually cannot go for a long time. But also that there's a need of more studies that are focused on Laminaria rodriguezi, so not studying it just as an associated species, but focusing on it in the Mediterranean Sea. And thank you. And if there are any questions, I'm here trying to answer.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
I'm not the guy. Why did you choose that location and not another one? I mean, was there a specific reason to choose
The Menorca channel? The Menorca channel, because it has the data from Indemaris that could give me an idea of biodiversity. And now, well, the study was focused, the project of Macrobios was focused on Maerla, that occurs in the Menorca channel. So they know that is here in the Menorca channel. And from this data, then I decided to focus on Laminaria. But it was because I had this data, so I couldn't choose the site.
Okay.
Also, like in Spain, there are many studies about it. Like in Italy, for example, the articles that I found out from my literature review, most of them were done in the 60s or 70s, and most of the recent ones were in Spain.
Okay, so actually I have a question for you. I understand that in some sense you are trying to assess the biodiversity that you have over there. But I would say, first of all, maybe it's a fundamental question is when you speak about macrofauna, what size range are you addressing? For example, I work more in phytoplankton, etc., and there are specific size ranges. But I would say that macrofauna is it can be a whale or a shark or something smaller. So you have a very large range of them. And associated to that is I would assume that in order to evaluate biodiversity, you need a certain sample size. So it's not the same as trying to study sea urchins, which are small and relatively well addressed with your camera, that if you want to address a shark that is actually moving and you only have one shark per square kilometer. And so and the third question related to that is, which is the size of a size area in which is adequate to evaluate a microfauna diversity.
Okay. Okay. Well, in this case, the biodiversity that I studied were not based on the videos, but on the Indemaris one, because from this video you couldn't assess the biodiversity, but maybe well, now we are working on this, but maybe we will assess more the functional diversity, because of course you cannot count the individuals in this case. And for the measures, well, for the macrofauna, I don't remember exactly the scientific categories. But the orders it's around the millimeters, like from 5 millimeters. Now I'm not sure, I don't remember. But of course, it depends also on the quality of the videos. If, for example, from the ROV, you could detect more the details because it was done from above and it was moving. From a tripod that is stationary, it's different. But also with the, I didn't say, but in the tripod we had 2 GoPros, because using 2 GoPros you can use stereometric measure, and so you can measure the organisms that you find or the area. We didn't do it yet. But I don't know how much it should be the area. I think it depends on the target of the study. If we want to characterize the habitat, we do not focus on the size of the organisms that we may find there.
Because I would assume that in biodiversity emphasis like a sort of hyperbolic or square. I mean, there's probably a limit of the space in which after what your diversity will not increase much more. So it's sort of exponential, which is limited. But I guess that you have to address which space you have to is ideal to evaluate. The diversity.
Yeah, it depends on the target of the study.
Because probably Giulia hasn't gone too much into that aspect, because actually, as she said, the biodiversity comes from in the mark, that was normally found in graphs and non-intrusive. And usually you measure asymptotic accumulation rates of macrofauna, fauna, megafauna, and then you assess how many graphs of dredges you need to deploy. Usually it's 3 dredges, 5 graphs. And that's done by square meters. So all the fauna is assessed at a square meter scale. But most of the efforts she puts into the project are from the video that are not actually a biodiversity estimate. So this visualizing things that you can see that can inform you on how the habitat is, in which quality, and something that you can easily monitor.
And know that I am well. And apart from the type of experiment, I would assume that the prior dimensionality of the seafloor plays a role. And actually, the type of vegetation is actually a tridimensional structure in which the more I would say 3D you have over there is more protecting to other organisms. So
yeah, I mean, we are just exploring this area, and the videos Giulia says, and she showed a first trial on there. The water quality was not so good. Some rearrangements need to be done, so that's why we haven't put much effort on the considerators of the 3D. And for that, on next spring, we want to work on 3D habitat because that's very important for patients. But that's another phase of the process. That's our first approach. We got very good data on that, and we've seen it's a very easy way. We just went through the Roman, show the tripod, recover them, and get this information, and that's very positive. And she proved that at least that habitat can be characterized and can be at least for good status. Now I prefer to do
I have a dumb question. How did you read the last plot you showed? Like on slide 21? Like I don't understand how to read, like what does it tell you?
So basically, for example, Okay, so the gray is white is if it was present in that station, and the green if it was absent. So because it's only present absence, not really a number.
Okay, maybe it's, yeah.
And here you have the different species. I mean, sometimes it's species for some species of the cat shark, we know the name of the species. In other cases, you just have crab, goby, because you cannot access the species. And so you can see it's just to visualize in all the stations how the species were present or absent. And then we can do other analysis in the future.
And what is trolling?
Trolling is when you have those nets that basically grab from the seabed
Okay,
and destroys everything because okay. It's characterize in Italian, but I don't know in
Yeah,
Spanish.
okay.
And on your literature review, you only have data in the Western Mediterranean because it's only studies there, or it's mixed. It's only fine there
It's mostly because
because it's like there's nothing in the Eastern.
also because it's less studied there,
Yeah.
but also because it's warmer, so it's very difficult to find laminaria there because it's warmer. Actually, there was a study in Greece, and they used an ROV because they thought that there was laminaria there, but they didn't find anything. And they said it could be due to warming, but probably also to trawling, because in Greece it's much more effort of trawling. I mean, there are some areas in Greece where the water temperature is a little colder, so they expected to find a laminaria, but probably due to trawling it destroyed everything, and they didn't find it.
What about Northern Africa? Is just that there is no laminaria over there, or it's just that there are no studies?
I think mostly because there are no studies, and that's why I mean, it would be important to study the distribution of laminaria in all the Mediterranean. For example, in Italy, the study in Sicily, they were done in 1969. So maybe now it could be different. And also most of these studies, the laminaria was not the central species. It was just found when they were studying something else. Okay, yeah, okay.
Is there maximum depth until you can find them, or do you can expect?
Around 110, 120 meters. It depends. Like here in Menorca Channel, you can find it very deeply because the water is very clear. So the light penetrates much more. And that's why, for example, you don't find it in France or North Adriatic because the water is more turbid. So the light doesn't penetrate enough to do photosynthesis. Yes.
So when they are destroyed, is this a species that comes back quickly, or it takes a while to come back?
It depends on currents and the reproduction because it reproduces both asexually and sexually. So also with the spores and
Like
but-
Ulva, for example, Ulva has this microspore that.
yeah, Ulva, for example, it is a kelp. And but when it regrows, it grows faster. So if it can settle again, then it grows faster. For example, from the videos from Marovi, that were taken by Indemares, there they didn't find so much laminaria as we did with the videos of last year. Probably because after the introduction of the protected area, then it was recovering, but it's an hypothesis. Okay, no other question,
No
I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you have suggestions for the scenario, I have some for scenario, so please feel free to send me or go. Thank you.
One sec, where is the?
Should I turn it off here?
Yeah.